So just to remind you, we're recording part two of a, a model that we've created in a lecture um, on innovation in TESOL. So as I said earlier, in part one, we organize our lessons, not just the whole unit, but each lesson, each time we meet students, in terms of those what and why and how of expansion. We want we want students to expand their frames of reference, and these are the aspects in relation to which you organize. I suggest it's really good to organize our lessons. So we finished here with students having actually identified the kinds of objects they would want to put on their interactive maps. Now, these are the buttons they identified as ways to actually indicate to tourists where they can click to find more information. Now, we're still talking about the what here. This is the lesson 2, we're talking about the what. So they identify those bits. These are the buttons. And now, do you think they actually can name what each of those pictures actually represents? Of course they can, because they have actually already done it in lesson 1. When they were deciding what, oh, in lesson 2 was it? Anyhow, in the previous lesson, when they were deciding on what to put onto their interactive map, they were actually exploring the things you had underneath those empty bits. So if they click on this bit, you show them some landscape. When they click on this one and this one and this one. So what they were learning is to categorize, not just the examples of different landscape, but also how to categorize them. So it's quite a lot of learning, but it's all contextualized and for a purpose, which is to help them to design their interactive map. So since they had all these names already here, they can actually create little descriptors so that when someone clicks here, they can find out that this is Brindabella Mountains or this is Canberra University. So all well. They've produced all these descriptors. You will teach them how to actually make the link. So that's just ICT skills, how to actually make a little thing pop out and or a new slide. Depends in what application they create this map. And so they paste the name for each of the objects. But now we're moving to why. Right, the why aspect. Why? How can we expand students' terms of reference in relation to the names that they have just inserted under those question marks? So the question is, why do people name things the way they did? Well, there are many different. I mean, there is no rule how you will actually support students in this aspect. My own idea for the day was we could actually give them here another map, another table like we created in lesson 1, but now what we could do is to give them access to synonyms. So what's the difference between mountains and the lakes, right? University and kindergarten, forest and arboretum, lake and a wetland, lake and a pond, lake and a river. What is a wetland? What's a bird hide? As opposed to, I don't know, bird nest or some other things you can come up with. But you see my point. So you can actually create another table where they can actually explore why particular things are called a particular way, not another way. You can then expand that table like we did in lesson 1 and create now further activities for each of those synonyms so that children can develop or students can develop broader understanding of what a pond is or a hill or a mountain broader understanding of the differences. So you can have things like matching. Hot potatoes have a great, actually here, it's a very simple software, but you can create, is this a hill or is this a mountain? So what do they learn? I mean, at the first sight, people think, well, what they're learning is the difference between hill and a mountain, but they also learn how to ask questions. Is this a hill or is it a mountain? Is this a lake or is this a pond? Right? So there's a lot of things you can do that at the surface, students are actually focusing on the nouns, but actually lots of other work is done. So while we keep it simple, a lot of work happens. So now we move to how. Okay. So what do I have here? In the how aspect of those descriptors, which is the Brindabella Mountains and um, bird nest and so on, there's lots of happening in these names. They are not just names, and I wouldn't just leave the lesson right here. I would actually focus on the fact that some of those names, if not, well, not wetlands, right? But some of those names are actually written with capitals. So then you can expand it and have a look how names of objects or of landscape um, objects are named in the honor of people. So do we say um, you can focus, for example, on order. So once you've done the capitals, you could now focus on order. Do we say um, like here, for example, is this exercise. Do we say the Lake of Burley Griffin or do we say Burley Griffin Lake, right? So you could get them through those exercises. Um, sorry, I just skipped here what I wanted. I can't remember actually what I put here because this is just your imagination. So names of people will be capital, names of towns will be capital, things like wetlands in most cases are actually small letters. So we've done that. So these words or these sort of points here give you focus for different expansive activities. Now we can actually look at the word order, as I said. Is it the Lake of Burley Griffin or is it the Burley Griffin Lake? Right? So there's these kind of things you could actually focus students on. Now we have also things of names of bridges. So the Commonwealth Bridge or the Bridge of Commonwealth of the Commonwealth, right? So you can actually do these things here. Now you can also have a look at compounds, how compounds and go and look for a million of, well, not quite, but a number of ready-made online games where students can learn how compounds are created in English and how they are spelled. We know that in English people have problems how to spell in spelling those compounds because sometimes they are two words, sometimes they are one word, and I think that in English people are quite flexible or tolerant about these kinds of misspellings. But the fact is how we actually create words in English by actually putting two words together. Homework, bird hide here. So you can start first with things relevant to this interactive map, but then when you actually direct students to online games, there will be other things like homework, home loan, homeware, things like that. Okay. Now, you can actually uh, direct students then to compounds which are spelled together. And maybe there's a rule for it. I didn't explore it. I'm not actually that much focused on it this very moment. All these things are just to give you, just to inspire you how much can be done. What appears to be just a simple thing, putting the pictures on the map and then naming them. So now we move to lesson 3. So we've done the what, how, and what, why, and how of lesson 2. Now lesson 3. So what we would like to do is to show students, to show students in the what that the what. So what people do is that interactive maps do not just have a name that this is Brindabella Mountains and this is a university. They also have a description. Right? So we show to students different ways in which people actually create those interactive maps, but a lot of times there's a photo, there's a name, and then there is a brief description. They also have actually directions, and that would be good too to incorporate. So the idea is now to show students how people actually do that. Not how, sorry, because we're doing what, right? So that the maps do have description. So did you hear how I corrected myself? I said we're still at the what level. It's really important to have these what, why, and how in your mind because they focus you. So there is an order. And also what you do, you train students to actually to this specific routine. So as a result, they themselves learn to actually differentiate between different ways of how information is managed. So you show to students different examples of map that and show that they have more than just names. Now, to look now at why of description. Now, this would be interesting. What I would do myself. I mean, there are no single ways of actually doing that. Right, there is no one way of doing this, but one way that I would go about showing to students the assisting students in actually expanding their frames of reference about why people do particular things the way they do is to actually give them an exposure to different types of texts and to show that the description is a particular genre that is used say for differently for different types of texts so that now people see or students can see that the why of description in terms of maps does a different job and serves a different purpose than the why, say, in some other genre. So, of the still description, but in a different context. Pardon me. So the genre is the same. It's the description, but the description for the purpose of a map will be short, a description of something, say, in court, and I'm not going to, you not actually have to do that, but you can actually show a video. But if you have a description, but in a genre, but in the context of court, then the description is quite thorough and very carefully designed. In description for, say, to explain to someone else how details about architecture would be again more detailed and differently organized in a description on the map. So now the why of description, which deals here with the purpose, right? The purpose of a description for in an interactive map deals with those differentiating components of this purpose in the context of the map, right? And that's very important because then we're not actually training students how to do a description for a map. We are assisting their critical thinking skills and assisting their critical thinking skills and also assisting students in making informed choices. Because why it's important, you may think that at the end of the day, they may actually end up doing what we thought they should be doing in any case, but this is not true. Students, and especially younger students and older students, what they may want to do is actually play with purposes and actually combine things from different contexts because that's how change happens, right? Change is not something, or things do not evolve because out of nowhere. What they do evolve from is, like Bourdieu says, from every individual interaction that we go through. The, these interactions are always, in a sense, idiosyncratic. They do, of course, in order to be understood, they draw on how people see things are done, but at the same time, each of them is quite unique. So we enable students to see now how or what is the purpose of description for the map by exploring the purpose of description in different contexts, but it doesn't mean that we have to drill students to actually do what we want them to do. We will support them in the ways they want to actually play with it. Okay, so we've done the why of the what of description, the why of description, now the how of description. So how are we to support students in actually getting these descriptions right? Now, you could actually show them a description and make them mimic it, or so that's one way. I just think it would be too much of an overload on the student. I had a little bit of a different idea. What I thought we could have, actually what we could do is to identify it when you actually to have a look at the description. Maybe that is not a bad idea in a sense only. So if you actually copy paste, so for example, now you see how it all evolves as you work with it. So this is, for example, a description that you had in mind, and you could actually look at it and see that it is divided into particular stages. So stage 1, stage 2, we call them in English paragraphs. So, and each of these paragraphs begins with a specific letter, right? Or pardon, not letter, sentence, or word. Jesus, I can't focus. So it's with a particular word. So we look at these words, and what we will now be looking for is from this selection of words here, which we have on the bottom, we will look for the words that suit us. So each student might actually click on these keywords and see how a particular keyword, whatever it would be, therefore, hence, as a result, it, this, they, the name of the object, the mountains, or Burley Griffin Lake, the university. Okay, so the sort of first words. And they can see how these keywords, how these words actually are used in text. So for example, if the keyword is this, so this, you could actually now create a small activity that will help students see the difference between the usage of this, the usage of that, and the usage of it. Right? So that students can now see that this is not that, and it doesn't refer to this, but just refers to, it's a replacement of the noun. Right? So this mountain, that mountain, and it is a chain that we all, blah blah blah, I don't know, visit, or chain that we all see as significant for the development of Australian landscape. I mean, I'm just making it up, but you can see, you can create activities that will now expand this keyword by compare and contrast through an interesting interactive activity, or many more than one. Students will now develop a bit more references to actually that will allow them to contextualize the usage or the meaning, if you like, of the word this. So another word, you could say they, or therefore, weekly. Because, why am I focusing on them too? Because when we actually do the what, of description, we have these names, right? We have the names of Burley Griffin Lake and so on, the University of Canberra. When we do the why of description and we analyze what the first words are, we will find out that these words are very important for the descriptions. They are the focusing words of the paragraph, and this is the typical thing in English. The most important thing, which is the focus of the paragraph, is first. So we will draw students' attention that not that those words in the beginning of those paragraphs are very important. So when we now explore those words, we will want to actually understand through activities what they actually mean, and then as students choose from those words the ones they want to use for their description. So for example, they will use the this, they will use the like and it, right? And what I want them to end up with is something like, this is the Burley Griffin Lake in Canberra. The lake is the key attraction of Canberra. It is the center. It is in the center of Canberra. So you can see now that instead of, so those keywords are very important, because once they actually know that the paragraph starts with the key word which focuses the paragraph, so everybody knows what the function of that paragraph is, it to argue as a result this and this happened and therefore blah 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 blah, or is it to actually introduce the topic. This is the Brindabella mountain chain in Canberra. Oh, these are Brindabella mountains. These are Brindabella mountains. This is the University of Canberra. Okay, so these are very important. They play a very important role. This will be very important for your students, because later on, as they start actually producing longer texts, they will already have some sort of awareness of how to start the paragraph. And that's very important, because this is really one of the problems that students have, English or not English students have, when developing writing skills, is to actually organize their text, organized in paragraphs, and actually make coherent links between paragraphs. And this is one of the tools. So once students actually have gone through activities which will allow them to actually choose the sequence, right? The sequence, because there's a sequence, the specific keywords they want to use in their descriptions, and organize them in sequence, then they will end up with this, which is just the keywords, and now you can support them in actually creating those little descriptors. So the question, of course, is, and how are they gonna get those words like attraction or the key attraction? The key attraction is actually a compound, right? Or like the center. Where are they gonna get that from? Well, you can actually show them more examples of descriptors for maps. You can use them from Wikipedia. Wikipedia has some descriptors. You can use them from the maps. I have no idea what other resources you could use where you will find such descriptors that are useful for maps. And then you can show them to students, and then you can together analyze what makes them good, what are the qualities, and then as a result from all of them they can pick the words they would like to choose, and they will end up with this. Now by lesson 3 we have already set up the pattern of how to work and how to get information. So students are not stressed out, and the information, even when it is found, when it is actually presented like this in terms of keywords, it's still assisted with support activities for students to actually understand not only what things mean, but where to put them in their work, right? So that it's not like, you would not say, so when we have a situation like for another, you could have, if you wanted to say that many people visit the lake, so you wouldn't say it is visited, right? So maybe not the lake, but if it was the Parliament House, right? So it is visited daily by whatever. This is just not the right order. So annually, 300,000 people come to Canberra to see the Parliament House, for example, right? So you can see that they are keywords and you put them right in the beginning because that focuses the reader. This is what's the purpose of this paragraph. It is to say how often people, 300,000 people come to Canberra. How often? Annually, this many people come to Canberra. So you learn the stress, the emphasis, the relevance of paragraphs. So you actually learn a lot of discursive rules through this work. You can read this here. So, as I said to you, when you do these expansive activities, you do build them up with online games, ready online games, or the games you create so that students can actually have richer opportunities to compare and contrast um, the context in which specific words are used, and as a result to actually build a better understanding of them. What they also learn, as I said earlier, they learn things like the questions that accompany those um, exercises or different words or different commands. So the exercises, as they at the surface level, they may seem to be pitched at the level relevant for a particular stage of your uh, unit of work or your lesson plan, but actually they do more than we can actually see. I have also at the end, so you can develop according to lesson 4 and lesson 5 for this particular unit of creating interactive maps. Now I have also put in here a few other projects around which you could structure your units of work. One day on French television actually was one of the assessment types of projects that Professor Andrew Lian was using at the University of Queensland when he was in the French department, and that was a very successful project. Creating school letters, community blogs, and so on. Just I will point you to the website of Pecha Kucha that I created as a result of my work with my area of former students. So there is one here. So I will close this segment now. And basically what I wanted to say is that those few tips, which is how to actually structure each lesson around the awareness, autonomy, and achievement aspects, what they actually help us with is true that students do not have tools in order to complete their projects or assignments. We need to, first of all, um, produce them, then enable interaction with those tools in a way that engages students' individual histories. We need to make sure that each lesson finishes at a high note so that children actually see progress. And most of all, we must make sure that all our lessons, all our activities, all students' projects are actually oriented towards a particular audience, right? Don't forget that. A communicative task must have an interlocutor, must have an audience. And it cannot be really artificial because then students end up doing things like they did in that example that Cramsh described in her ESL migrant program, right? So it's important that students actually learn how language is used, for what purposes, and in what ways they can actually manipulate language for the best outcome. And this has to be done only when the context is as authentic as possible. When it is artificial, that doesn't happen. They just produce responses to pedagogic game. They don't learn how to communicate. They learn only how to actually satisfy the responses or requests of a teacher. So I hope that was a little bit helpful. In your assignments, I don't expect, I mean, you can produce what I just produced here. You can actually take this game, literally take what I've done here, and now see how you would work with it and create a story. What would you do in order to actually um, ensure that all 5 lessons in this um, design, in this unit of work, are completed? So you could do that. Because nothing is here done. So I don't expect from you all these pictures and everything. What I do expect is that you actually explain in terms of what, why, and how you would conceptualize an innovative unit of work in your context, how you would conceptualize, and how, as a result, that unit of work meets the criteria of innovation, which are, as I said, and I'm just saying it again so that it gets reinforced, which are to engage students' individual histories, right? And also to ensure that the task is communicative, which means it actually is oriented toward some audience. And that's it. Thank you very much.